Oh, hi there. I'm Kaylee from Homegrown Art, and today I'm going to be showing you how to draw Monstera. Let's get started. So first we're going to go ahead and create a guide for ourselves. I'm going to use the lid from one of my favorite candles. It has nothing to do with fall. And while you're tracing, just make sure that your pencil is tucked right into the edge of whatever you're using. So go all the way around. Go lightly. This is just a guide for us, and it'll be easier to erase later if you just do it lightly. So now that we have our circle, we're going to decide what direction our leaf is going to go. So let's say it is on an angle from here down. So I'm just going to create that line-ish for myself. Okay. And so from the center of this line, we're going to start the heart shape of the top of the leaves. So right about here, that's maybe a quarter of the way down into the circle. We're going to start, swoop around, and then just blend into that outside line of the circle. We're going to do that the same. We're going to create just a short little line in the middle here, and then we're going to do the same for the other side. So up and swooping to blend in with that other side of the circle. And then from here, we're going to go beyond the end of the circle, and I'm just going to angle this a little bit. And we're not going to go too far, probably right about here, just a little bit past that circle. If it was a more mature leaf, you're going to go farther, extending down and to the end here, but because it's kind of that middle, I'll call it an adolescent leaf, we're just going to go a little bit farther than the circle. So with a wrist movement, we're going to go from that circle and just meeting up at the bottom here where we put that mark. Same thing, I'm going to rotate the paper so it's just easier on the wrist to keep that consistent movement. And we're going to go from that mark we made and just wrist movement to blend right into the circle that we made. All right, so now that we have just the outside marked out for us, we can go ahead and we can start to make the holes in the leaves, the fenestrations. So at the very top of the leaves, let's start on this left side. At the very top, it's going to be almost parallel to the top of the leaf. It will just be on a slight downward angle. So starting here, it's going to come down to a point. It's going to angle up and then back down, blending out into that outer circle. Next one, we're going to go and it's going to be just slightly more of an angle, and it's going to come up, wrist movement, and then back down, blending into that outer circle. And we're going to do this a few times. Every time it's just slightly more of a downward angle until you get to the end. So you know what, some leaves have 3, 1, you can do as many as you like. So, but I'm going to continue. Some are more round, some are more long, but as long as it blends out into that outer circle. Okay, so we'll just do a small one. Okay. Other side, I like to just move the paper around so that it is easier in that wrist movement. You get more of a consistent outcome. So I'm going to go up, curve around back, and then down, blending into that circle. Okay, keep going. And they don't need to be exactly perfect on both sides. Sometimes one side has more, sometimes one side has less. Let's just do maybe 3 on this side. At the very bottom, it's more of a spade shape, so instead of just going directly back here and blending, you're going to swoop more towards the front. Okay, so now we have a good outline for our Monstera. We can go in and ink that. Okay, I'm going to put you into a time lapse and I'll meet you at the end. So I finished inking that outer line, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to create the spine of the leaf. So I have that line that I used initially to get the shape of our leaf. So using that line, it's going to line up with the very center of this small segment at the top here. So what you're going to do is from this very edge, come from the corner down, meeting very gradually with that line in the middle. Same thing from the other side, coming down gradually, meeting with the line in the middle, and you'll blend it out a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it will come just a little bit closer to the end of the leaf, sometimes all the way, sometimes just most of the way. But as long as you have something there to represent that. And from there, we have spines like this that come out into each segment of the leaf. So at the top of the leaf here, it's going to come up almost like a bird's wing. It's going to come up and out, and you're always going to aim for the center of this outer section. So in this case, it's going to be this pointier part. In the lower areas, it's going to be the very middle of all these segments. So these ones come up and around. I'm going to do the same on the other side, kind of up and around. And they actually don't come quite as far. I went a little bit further with this one here. We'll bring that back. That's why we have erasers. So aiming for this middle section, you come up and around. And there we go. Keep going, up and around, aiming for that middle part. These ones, as you get to the center, they don't come up as much and down. It is more just a downward slope. So coming down, aiming for that middle of the leaf. And there are some in the very bottom as well. Center. And so going across to this other side again. So it is the top half of the leaf. It will come up a little bit. You don't want them perfectly across from each other. Usually they are staggered a little bit. So let's go in between these two on the other side, coming up a little bit and towards the outer middle of the segment. Again here, this is almost in the middle of, it seems like it might come up a little bit, but let's start it from here and just slope it out. This one we don't want to be perfectly in line with this one on this side, so we're going to come down a little bit and we're going to aim for this middle of this outer segment. So now that we have those lines, let's go ahead, we'll ink those as well, and then I can show you where to add some shadows to give it a more realistic look. All right, so now we finished inking the lines on the inner part of the leaf, on the spines. I'm sure you could see that I moved the paper around quite a lot. So I'll just add in a quick tip here for drawing in general, but especially when you're using those fine liners. If you don't feel like you can finish one full line in one movement, you know, whether you're using your fingers, your wrist, sometimes you use your shoulder. If you don't feel like you can finish those lines in one movement, try and just move the paper around to see if you can make it more natural for you. So let's say if I was to do this really long outside line in one movement, I know that my hand can complete up until here, and then from here I can move to my wrist and just get a really consistent curve down. So you know, in drawing in general, but especially when you're using those fine liners, if you pull them up midline, you're really going to see where you came back down, and there's going to be a little extra ink there when you do that. So just something to keep in mind for the future. You know, if you're liking your leaf like this, you can absolutely leave it just like that. If you want to add more details to it, I'm just going to quickly pull in a drawing that I was working on earlier this week. So this one, this is toned paper with white charcoal and regular black charcoal. So they look like this. So it's pretty fun. So your spines of your Monstera leaf So here you've got the line version. So for details, you can leave the spine. As far as the surface of your leaf, it is raised, so it is going to catch more light than some of the flatter areas of your leaf. So if you add any details at all to the spine of your leaf, it's just going to be very subtle. So pretending this is just a bigger version of the spine here. If you do, you can do straight lines, but if you do rounded lines like this, you can just give it a little bit more dimension so you can see that it is a rounded stem. So you can add 1 or 2 or just experiment, but that'll give it a little bit more dimension. So you'll add that to the spine if you like, but if you're only doing shadows, you'll stay to the left and to the right of that spine. You'll stay to the bottom sides of these smaller spines. And then a lot of the tips of the leaf segments, they actually fall down a little bit, so you'll see more shadows there. So if you want to add shadows at the tips here, you can do that. But you can leave your leaf as is. You can leave it in pencil, and then you can do more like sketchy, like pencil drawings on top of it. Use your leaf for whatever you like. But those are the areas that you'll want to focus on. So I went in and I added in pencil lines in those areas that I mentioned. So to the left and to the right of that main spine, just to the underside, very subtle, underside of those smaller spines, and to the outer bottom portions of those leaf segments. And then just a little bit at the end, because as the leaf falls down, it's going to have a little more shadow here. In between those, I just added some really sparse light lines, just so you can see that the texture does extend throughout the leaf. But this is how I would do it personally. So if you wanted to use this as a reference, you can go ahead, you can pause the video. But otherwise, that's everything. So if you enjoyed the video today, feel free to press that like button. If you want to see more like this, I post videos every Friday, so you can hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, we'll see you next time. Take care.